You'll know when you have a wild woman. She'll practice her craft without boundaries. She is truly autonomous. Her loyalty is only to the family she serves, a midwife who will not allow herself to be held back by a system she didn't create.
This podcast is for the birth keepers who want to grow and change. We are open to learning through self-reflection and supportive community. We are creating this space to explore without judgment. We are remembering we were
Born wild.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Born Wild podcast. I'm your host, Leah.
And Sophia. Today we have with us Kristine Laurie. We interviewed her, I'm trying to remember how long ago it was. I'll put the link in the show notes so everyone can listen to it because it was an awesome episode. But I specifically invited you on because we haven't talked about preterm birth, preterm babies, and it's just something that has been like coming up here and there in our practice. Questions clients have about like, oh, my sister had her baby early, what does that look like? And we know that you've worked in some third world countries where maybe that might even be more common. And so we just wanted to chat mainly about that topic today, but I'm sure we'll touch on other topics as well. But first, could you introduce yourself again to listeners in case it's the first time they're hearing of you?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me back. So my name is Kristine. I've been a midwife for 35 years now. And I trained traditionally in a traditional apprenticeship in the Amish community. And so I very much trained as a traditional midwife and pretty much hands-off normal physiological birth. Don't mess with it. And when you do need to, this is what we do, that kind of stuff. And so that's basically how I've learned to practice and how I always have practiced. And I got my CPM certification in 2007, but it didn't make me any better of a midwife because I had that certification. I always let people know 17 years practicing illegally without it, and I wasn't suddenly magically a much better midwife. And so, but I'm glad that I have it because I now work for Doctors Without Borders, or MSF, as we say in the field. And so I do humanitarian aid, working in low resource settings, refugee camps, conflict zones, disaster areas, disease outbreaks, things like that. And I manage all the sexual and reproductive health. That's what the midwives for MSF do in the field. Physicians do not do that. I do not work with obstetricians. I go, and my title is midwife manager, and there's usually a team on the ground that is national staff, in that they live in that country, and this is where they live and work, and now they're working for MSF. And then I go in and I capacity build, and I help them just manage all the sexual and reproductive health. And that includes not just maternity care, prenatal, postpartum, and birth, but also contraceptive care, also safe abortion care. And a big part of it is sexual violence, sexual SGVB, sexual and gender-based violence, because in those kinds of settings, it's highly stressful, and there's a huge amount of sexual violence and violence against women. And so we see a lot of that, and specifically in conflict zones. In armed conflicts, rape is used as a weapon of war. So it's used to terrorize populations. So we see a lot of that. And so that's a big part of what we do. It's not, people think I'm just off, attending births all the time. Sometimes I go on assignments and it's not maternity at all. I don't attend any births. I'm just attending women who have experienced sexual violence.
So intense. I feel like we could do a whole episode on how you do self-care, during,
Yes.
Such a big part of it, to be able to keep going and to give yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for the introduction. And what do you know about preterm birth?
I feel like, especially because in California, our laws say 37 weeks is, the cutoff for needs to be after that for us to attend the birth. And, we could go on about politics with that. but we just don't get exposure to babies before that. And
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like how babies do, what kind of support they need. Paint a picture for maybe people who are faced with their water's breaking at 34 weeks, and they're like, "What can I expect here?" And what choices am I going to be needing to make?
Yeah. So I mean, in the US, 1 in 10 live births is preterm, well, however they're defining that, before 37 weeks, I guess. But then there are a significant amount also that are before 34 weeks, especially Black populations. They have like 14.3% more preterm births than white populations do. And so it's a big issue. If you go to the March of Dimes website, you can learn everything you want to learn about preterm birth and all the statistics. They really take they are the best at taking, getting those statistics and keeping track of all of it. But so 10.4% of live births are going to be preterm. And so if somebody has a preterm birth, if let's say, 34 weeks, their membranes release, what are they going to expect? So they're going to expect to hopefully not go into labor super soon so that they can have 2 doses of steroids in order to help the lungs develop. 34 weeks is lungs are probably going to be okay, but I think they will still give, I know at 32 weeks they will give steroids for the lungs, but ideally we want to get a shot of steroids and 12 hours later another shot, and then we're pretty good after those two. And that's been my experience in the field. We hope that the labor won't start. Every once in a while somebody's been already having some contractions, and then but mild, and preterm labor doesn't feel like term labor. First of all, the uterus is smaller, and it doesn't, to say it doesn't hurt, it's very subjective. But I've had a lot of mothers say, well, it just didn't, it didn't get my attention. It just really didn't feel like labor. And so then what happens is then the waters start to leak, and then the contractions pick up, and it's like, oh, this is labor.
Yeah.
And so then it's a little too late. But when it's a leak, when the water starts to leak out, you can maybe keep they might even, depending on the gestation, they might give some tributylene or something just to help that, if nothing else is going on, help the baby stay in there a little bit longer. Sadly, from what I hear, most of the time somebody goes in, their membranes release, they'll confirm it maybe with ferning or whatever, and they give them a vaginal exam of all things. Like, it would seem like, okay, so really, why is this information so important? Because if they were sitting there at 8 or 9 centimeters, I'm pretty sure you would know it, because they'd probably be contracting. But somebody not contracting who's reported that their membranes have released,
Yeah.
I can see doing a speculum exam and want to see, get some, see if there's fluid, do a ferning test, whatever. But to do well, I used a sterile glove. Yeah, but you're still shoving bacteria up in so it's just, and with a preterm baby, so crazy. I would expect they're probably going to get antibiotics at some point in time during the labor, once the labor starts. But it's interesting because, we do a lot of, I've never worked in a NICU, obviously, here, but I have worked with a lot of preterm babies, really preterm, in the field. But here it seems like there's a lot of, I think, babies are born, we should leave the cord intact, right? Oh no, it's preterm. They're going to cut the cord just like we would if the baby wasn't, the typical sort of thing. And then it's never case by case, or it doesn't seem like it is. It's all like, okay, here's this baby. It's too early. We've got to put it in here. We've got to do that. There's no kangaroo mother care. There's no, well, let's see how this baby does. Let's put an oxygen saturation thingy on there, and check the O2 sats and see, will it be okay right here on the mother's chest, and we'll put warm blankets on it. How is this baby doing at 32, even 34 weeks especially? Oftentimes those babies do quite well. And so I've seen some really remarkable things in the field, and so I think we tend to be doing a little bit of overkill in the, in NICUs and in hospitals, and generally speaking. I don't want you guys getting a whole bunch of people, lambasting you for me saying this, like, that's not true. We don't,
Yeah.
but
there are a lot of like protocols and policies, and even a baby who looks good, they're like, well, our policy is to keep them for 4 hours or whatever it is,
And it's just all and everybody's treated it's very cookie cutter rather than individual. And, I've seen some babies do really well, especially when they've gotten a couple doses of steroids in, and be able to do just fine, right with the mother and doing kangaroo mother care. I've taken care of some very extremely premature babies, because if they weigh 1,000 grams or more, they qualify as us being able to intervene. And so like 28 weeks, 29 weeks, 1,000 grams, and we have nothing in the field. We can give them a nasal cannula. We can give them some antibiotics, the usual stuff, that we would start a little IV, and they get antibiotics. So we have our standard things that we do, but then it's all kangaroo mother care.
And when you say you have nothing, do they still get antibiotic, or not, sorry, the steroids, or do you not
still get they get the steroids, but I mean, we have nothing. We can't intubate them. We don't have a CPAP. We don't have any of that. There's no incubators. I'm certain that there are projects within MSF where we are supporting a governmental hospital, like maybe in Lebanon or whatever. In the projects, I should clarify, the projects I've been in like remote areas, refugee camps, where it's an MSF, led thing. We're not in a hospital, and we don't have all the extra things. So this is kind of middle of nowhere. We do have projects, places in the Middle East where they won't send Americans there, so I haven't been able to go to these projects where there are neonatologists, and we do have incubators, and we are doing these things, but they're not MSF run, they're MSF supported. So we are supporting one of the government hospital. So then that's a different thing altogether. But MSF in general, and the places that I've been, it's very little. And if the babies can survive, then they survive with what little we're doing. We can give them some fluids, and we give them we got little oxygen and a little nasal cannula, and if they can survive, then
what about the suck reflex? Because I know that's a big conversation. Like, will they be able to breastfeed?
Yeah. And we each one is, again, every baby is going to be different, but there are ways to, you certainly, they don't, their stomachs are this big, and so you just need a few drops of colostrum, and you can do a dropper or a spoon or whatever until they can get that suck reflex, and just have the mother pumping. And I think that's really the most important thing. But we don't have feeding tubes or anything, so we have to feed them with the mother's colostrum and then milk. So we know exactly how much they're getting then, because they aren't, if they aren't nursing at the breast. You would be surprised at the 32 or 33 and 34-week babies that will latch on. It's quite amazing. So I think that we can't just across the board go, oh, this is just not going to happen. Every baby's very individual, and some of them, and we all know girls are stronger. We've heard that. It's not just an opinion. It's like there's research behind it. So when it's a boy that's born prematurely, I'm like, when it's a girl, I'm like, you have a chance here, because they're fighters. They really are. The boys can survive, of course, but the girls have a much better chance, and we just know that. And I've seen this personally, and I know that those are the statistics, with babies that don't have a lot of supportive care.
Yeah. Well, everyone who works in birth work agrees that women are strong.
Yeah. I think what you're saying about the lack of like individualized care, and this is like, in the work you're doing, it's like, you don't have the tools to individualize it. So, you sort of have to do it individually. But what we've found when we've had clients who, have babies early, like before we can care for them, is that we've had babies that are really strong that,
Mm-hmm.
I think would have been completely fine just going home, but they end up in NICU jail because,
Yes.
the protocols that they go in there and then they have to meet, and I think being in the NICU kind of depletes them.
Yes.
So it's like
It's
this never-ending.
overstimulating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like we're saying to our clients, like, okay, we got to do XYZ to get them out before day 3 when this will happen. And then they'll get an IV and then they're really trapped, like we can like anticipate the road they're going on, before
Yeah.
they even get there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And this is what I'm saying about, it's just standard. I've seen babies put on morphine and just totally knocked out because, oh, we got to put the breathing tubes in. It's like, did you give it a chance? Did you
Yeah.
give it a chance to even try to
Mhm.
breathe? And, in Europe, they do kangaroo mother care, particularly in Germany. And we know that this works really well. And I don't know why this has not caught on in the US. I don't understand why we are it's just all about our machines and our medicines and all of that. It's always going to be better than the mother baby diet. And I just don't understand that because it never will be better than that. We can do all the things they can be on all the tubes and wires and things and still be on the mother's chest more than just the, oh yeah, we get to do that for 1 hour a day, twice a day or something, like I know they do it, but it's not where they have it set up so that the mother is the incubator, not just like this cursory, let's give them some skin to skin to be really nice. We know that it helps babies grow. We know it helps them continue breathing because the mother's breathing. Like we make it mandatory in the field with these mothers, and then some of them are ready. Some of them are young and they're ready to get up and do stuff. And they're like, I don't want to be laying here. I'm like, sorry, you're the incubator.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they're just there and they're all wrapped up, and we know that babies do better. There are studies that show this. And for people that want so much evidence for everything, like show me the evidence for delayed cord clamping, and so we have to come up with all this evidence to let them allow us to have somebody have their cord pulsate a minute or two longer than immediately, and yet when we come with evidence for other things, it's just like there's really good evidence that the stuff you're doing is more detrimental than that. And they just, I don't understand why it's this, it's always this it's a two-sided thing, and they don't see it. So
Definitely. Yeah.
And even like the support in the NICU. I mean, we've had situations where they wouldn't allow in someone's lactation consultant. They have a lactation consultant, but she's not on in between these hours or something. And we're like, you're setting them up to fail. Like you're not even allowing them to
Yes.
bring in the support they need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it should, somehow it should be set up so that it's this quiet, peaceful environment where this baby continues to almost incubate on its mother. And I mean, there are some that really do need to be on everything and under the billy lights and all of that stuff. But for the ones that don't, the ones that are, this baby's kind of okay, like then put it on its mother and let them be there quietly. But oh, we don't have the staff for that. We don't have the this or that. And I get it, but we have to find a better way because we're failing mothers and babies. And if we have 1 in 10 women going into preterm labor, that's high. 10%, that's a high preterm labor that we're already failing women in their pregnancy, and so then their babies come early and we're failing them some more. So, and I think the rate's a little bit higher now because of IVF, because we know IVF, people that have had IVF and intrauterine insemination. So for IVF, I think they're 4.2 times more likely to have preterm birth than somebody who hasn't. And with intrauterine insemination, it's like 3.1%. But certainly they can go on to term and gestate. I know that David helped a woman, David Hayes, who I work with in Breach Without Borders, I think she was 53, 53 or 54 with a pregnancy and birth. And she was successful. She went to term. Everything was good. So there
Beautiful.
you go. But, it's also a lot of, a lot of pregnancy, a lot of our birth is here, right? It's in our head, how we handle pregnancy, labor, all of that, and how we view ourselves. And she viewed herself as, I'm doing this. And
Yeah.
she did it. If you think, oh my gosh, I'm really high risk. Okay, I have my IVF. Now I'm going to lay in bed still for the rest of my pregnancy
Yeah.
because this is a miracle baby and I am high risk. If you view yourself like that, you are going to be high risk. You're going to just buy into that whole thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yep.
Yeah. I had a question about jaundice because we touched on like bilirubin. Like, what has been your experience with these preterm babies and jaundice, bilirubin, like the need for this kind of support, or just like a normal part of the process?
Yeah, I have, so I work with a lot of babies that when they're preterm, a lot of them are in sub-Saharan Africa, so the jaundice we can see is like it's harder to see on their skin, but you can still see it. You can still see if it's on their palms and in their eyes and the soles of their feet, and we judge it by how we usually can't do. Sometimes we have labs, but sometimes we don't. We just have to look at the baby and go, how serious is this jaundice?
Mhm.
But it's still, and we don't have the phototherapy, so what are we going to do anyway? So it's just the same, just having a baby exposed to a little bit of sunlight and having the baby nursing and getting, getting through it. That's all we can do in the field. But I don't see a lot of jaundice in the field. There is some, but I don't see a lot, and I'm not sure why.
Interesting. Yeah. I'm curious, like, if there are babies that you feel like maybe extra medical support could have made a difference for them, like what that would be? Or do you find like actually what we're doing, like babies are doing really well and we don't feel like we need anything extra for them?
Yeah, just the really early preterm ones, the ones at 28 or 29 weeks, those are hard. Those are iffy. They're 1,000 grams. They may or may not make it. We just know if they're under 1,000, they are not. We just know that. And the reason why, then they're just on their mothers until that's not, but we don't do any extra care because we're using the resources, then we're using the medications and we're using things that, and personnel. We're taking up a bed. We only have so many. We don't have a NICU, but we called it neonates. So they would go with the mother to neonates. So you've got a woman with a baby taking up a bed, and sometimes they would be full. And so we had to have some selection criteria. And because it was determined that babies under 1,000 grams in those conditions, because they don't have enough extra supportive care, are probably not going to make it, then that's how we do that. So the early ones, I
And
think if
what's under 1,000 grams in pounds, just to convert it for people?
what
You know,
is it? Was it one? So a a kilo? How
I was
much
like,
is
I'm
a
sure I
kilo in
could
pounds?
Google it.
Couple pounds.
Okay. Yeah, that's super tiny.
Yeah, I mean really tiny,
Yeah.
small. And so, what those babies, ideally they would be intubated and, we would be helping with, with all of that and, or they'd have some sort of like a CPAP, something that they were able to have help with breathing because they just tend to, it's just a lot of work for them to try to breathe. And then of course, we're we're not feeding them other than orally, and those babies won't usually have a suck reflex, so it's just hard for them to get kind of the nutrition that they need. And I mean, some of them do make it. It's quite a miracle. And so I think that those are the ones that could benefit from just a little bit extra, especially the strong ones where you're like, if we just had just this little bit, because it's amazing how strong they are on their own.
What about
really,
like reasons for preterm labor that you have, seen in your experience?
in the field.
Maybe just anywhere, like what is your opinion on like the
Nutrition.
reasons? Yeah,
Yeah.
nutrition or infection or just like what is causing these babies? I mean, I know we touched on IV and IUI, but outside of that, other risk factors.
Yeah, infection, yeah, certainly UTI. In the field, a deadly combo at about 22 to 23 weeks is UTI with malaria.
Mm.
And this is a deadly combination. And women come in labor. We listen to the baby, nice, strong heartbeat. She's not in labor because the baby has passed and it's been a demise and her body's kicking it out. She's in labor because she has the deadly combination of UTI and malaria and wasn't getting prenatal care, or she would have gotten anti-malarials and, urine dipstick. We would have treated the UTI. But UTI here in the US, that is a sign. That's one of the things that will cause at least contractions to happen and irritate a woman and be like, I'm having a lot of contraction. Then you test and it's like, oh yeah, you have a UTI. So that and other types of, there's certainly other types of vaginal infections which aren't super common, but sometimes that will happen, and then you have a premature rupture of membranes, and then sometimes there's just a premature rupture, and like, why did that happen? We don't really know.
Yeah.
It's weirdly, it happens. I think it certainly could be related to nutrition if the bag isn't strong, but it's hard to know. Um, and then sometimes we just don't know why they go into preterm labor. There's a small amount of women that are going to have, and quote unquote, just a loose cervix. They like to call it incompetent cervix, but I hate saying those kinds of negative things about somebody's body. But so I just say it's a loose cervix. That's not super common, and usually, they'll do cerclage and stuff for that. But that's not a real common thing to have happen, and we can usually prevent a preterm labor with cerclage. But actual labor, like the body just starting, it sometimes it's a situation with the baby when we didn't know that there was something going on with the baby, and it wasn't diagnosed, or maybe there was something diagnosed and something wrong with the baby, and babies that have certain anomalies and things will tend to come early, depending.
My daughter came
Sometimes,
like a week too soon to have a home birth because California it's 37 weeks, and when I went to labor it was like 35 and 5.
uh-huh.
And I kind of chalked it up to maybe me being like really anemic because my first baby came term, and so but yeah, I remember being like a week shy, but I went to the hospital. I ended up in a C-section that almost killed her, and I remember being like, I think if I had just stayed home, she would have just come and it would have been fine. And she's fine, now obviously. But yeah, I remember being like, gosh, these dang laws. I don't know what like other states' rules are around preterm, but I wish I had, you know, even had the option presented to me to just stay home, being 5 minutes from the hospital and just see how the baby does. Because I feel like it would have made a huge difference for her.
Yeah. No, I have no doubt. It's really, it's at that gestation, probably,
Yeah.
it's like these weeks. It's just so, it's like, so when two more, so if I'm 36 and 5, I can't have my baby today at home, but in 2 days I
Yeah.
can have it at home
Yeah. Yeah.
because something's gonna magically happen. It's
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's just really, and the thing is like, then you start making exceptions, and then when do you stop the exceptions? And also going, you can go against regulations until you can't, because if something happened, then you would have to be like, yeah, we did know that, or you have to go in and lie and say, oh no, the baby was 37. But if you have records, the record
Yeah.
So it's really hard, and
And
I
all
get
the laws that are supposed to like protect everyone, and then they
it.
sometimes do people disservices. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and this is herein lies the problem of the legalities of midwifery and being certified or licensed and all of that, and why a lot of women are like, I'm not hiring somebody who has a license in my state. I have women contact me all the time now. Can you come to my state? I want a licensed who's not a midwife who's not licensed here. Do you know somebody that can help me? Can you come and help me? And I'm like, I usually can't, but I try to find them somebody. And because they don't want to play by the rule. If they know it's possible, they could fall outside of the rules, and they don't want to play by the rules.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a
Yeah.
question. I'm curious in your work with the Amish community. I've had a couple friends who end up working in that community, and like what your experience was. I don't know how long you worked with in that community, but just like with preterm birth, if it was the same rate as, English, is what they call them,
Mhm.
and like if the way that they dealt with babies that were born in that community preterm, or like what that was like. You know,
Yeah.
obviously
Um,
they reject technology and
yeah. I mean, they'll go to the hospital sometimes for certain things, obviously, but they try to avoid it if at all possible. My experience was I don't know if I didn't see in my practice at any point in time with the Amish or just with the general population. I did not have a 10% uh, premature rate. I rarely would have somebody whose membranes ruptured earlier. I think we're working with a population. Again, it's a mindset. They're taking responsibility for themselves and their care and their diet. We have exceptions. We know that there are people that are. You get to their house in labor and you open up their cupboards, and there's potato chips and soda and juice and you're like, and white bread, and you're like, and margarine, and you're like, what are we going for the birth? And then you look at the placenta and you're like, yeah. And but all through, they were, but they're not bad people. It's just like they're not, but the majority are, whole foods and very healthy, and a good majority are that way. And they want to have their babies at home, and they are taking responsibility for that. And so I think we're going to see less preterm. And I saw that even with the multiples that I've had.
That was going to be a question I had was like breech or
Yeah,
multiples. Do you see it more often or?
yeah. No, not with breech, certainly, and with multiples. No, my multiples all went to 39, 40, 41 plus weeks. I mean, but I told them to expect to.
Yeah.
You see a doctor at 12 weeks, they're diagnosed with twins, and suddenly they're very high risk, and they're told they're never going to make it to this time. And if they do make it to that time, they'll be sectioned then, depending on the or induced, depending on what position their babies are in. So, I mean, it's not case by case. It's
Yeah.
it's just one size fits all. This is what we do with you people. You people that have two babies inside of you. This
Yeah.
is what we're going to do. And
Well,
so
and you just recently had a triplet birth that kind of went a little bit viral on the internet, at least in our circles.
yes.
And I'm guessing those were not preterm.
they were 38 and 2.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah. And the triplets last spring that I helped with were 39 and 2.
Wow. So,
So, and it's not a fluke. These women took care of themselves. And if you listen to Amber's any interviews on any podcasts with her, I think she was on Positive Birth Australia podcast, and it's beautiful. She just talks about how she took care of herself and how she believed in herself and how responsible she was, for everything. I took the responsibility for all of this. So of course she's going to go to term. It didn't surprise me at all with the attitude that she had. And so I think, a lot of it is that, as well. But that's not to say that somebody with multiples that doesn't go to term isn't taking care of themselves or doesn't believe
right.
in themselves. There are so many other
Absolutely.
factors.
Yeah.
At any point in time, she could have spiked her blood pressure. She could have gone into preterm labor. It could have happened. But as soon as she got to 36 weeks and none of those things happened, and they still continued that. Then we were beyond preterm issues, so that was off the table. And then it was just, is anything going to happen? Is she going to develop preeclampsia? Is her blood sugar going to go out of control? Is she suddenly going to blow up like a, but she had zero swelling, zero. She could still put her rings on.
Wow.
Come on. I work out in the garden in the summertime, and at the end of the day, I'm like trying to get my rings off my finger. She had no swelling, and she just took good care of herself. And so I think that really played a big part of it. But she could have risked out at any point in time, and we know that a lot of multiples do.
Yeah.
And these are spontaneous triplets?
Yes. Both of the sets, this one and the one back in the spring. Yeah, she was a gravida 7.
Yeah. And you said once we got past preterm risk of 36 weeks, is that based on like laws in the state you serve, or?
No, I drove to her. I drove 12 hours to get to her. So for me, that was my personal comfort zone.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah.
I thought it was reasonable because I knew the lungs would be developed and they would be okay. And so I said 36, and I told the other mama was told 36 weeks as well. And so
I have a question. What about 35 weeks? If a parent's trying to decide, like, do I think my babies need steroid, or baby, steroids or not? Like, where is the line drawn?
I don't think they would do steroids at 35 weeks. I think the baby's going to be probably, in all likelihood, 35 to 36 weeks. A baby's going to be fine. I think in some states, I think you can attend at 36 weeks, but
California used to be that way until 10 years ago.
Yeah. Just ways to narrow the scope of what you can and can't do.
It's like funneling more women into the hospital.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then there's always the margin of error in case if somebody's dates were off,
right,
on the lesser side. So then all of a sudden you realize, oh, this is a 34-week baby. This is not a 35-week baby. So it can be different, so. But yeah, I just never had many people who I'm trying to think if I had one set of twins that came early when I was of all the twins that I had at home. In the field we get some early, but those even will go to term. It's kind of amazing how somebody living in like a refugee camp under the most stressful conditions with crappy nutrition can carry babies to term, and they're like healthy and normal and like, wow. So that's what makes me feel like, yeah, I think we're overthinking a lot of things with birth, in the hospital especially, but even at home as midwives. So but yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that we have technology here and we should use it when we need to, but I've seen some things that were just previously I thought would just not be possible, and I found that they really actually are possible.
And the thing is, it would be beautiful if we knew that the support we were getting was this individualized. Like, we're going to go in and they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt that your baby's going to do great. We're going to watch and see how the baby does and if they need help, versus like, if you go in guaranteed all these things are going to happen, and if you don't want it, you got to fight for it. Like, that's what makes people hesitate, or free birth, or whatever they're going to do.
Exactly.
Because they're scared to go in and feel trapped.
Yeah, because it's not expectant management, but birth isn't. They don't do expectant management for birth. It's all to, that's how they manage multiples. Well, okay, you haven't gone into labor yet. And so then next week we're going to do a cesarean because baby B is breech and we don't do breech, or baby A is breech, or they're both breech, or we're going to induce you. And instead of because why? Well, because the longer you go, we know one of the babies could die. Well, what's the chance of that happening? Well, whatever percent, a few percent. So it's like a 98% chance of this not happening, or 99 something. And because of that, they want to say there's a certain chance that, the baby.
Right. And they conveniently leave out the risks of the cesarean.
Right.
And what
Yes.
percentage of babies are damaged and
Mhm.
moms are given hysterectomies and like, you know,
Yep.
all of that stuff. That's not part of the conversation.
Yeah.
No, no, almost never.
Mhm.
And how it's going to affect your future reproduction, even if everything goes smoothly with the cesarean. But then, you know, you've got somebody who's just, you know, it's like they have a cesarean section. It's like, congratulations, here's your 2 babies. Have fun taking care of them and recovering from major surgery.
Yeah.
If you want or need major surgery for birth, then that's fine. We have it. It's good. And when we need it, it's great. And if you decide that you don't want to give birth vaginally to your twins for whatever reason, you think you've been given the risks and benefits and you decide you want a cesarean, that's fine. And there's no judgment there, even though somebody was really lambasting me the other day on on Instagram, like that I didn't smack talk cesarean birth at all. I think it's, you know, we know it can be life changing, but we also know if 1 in 3 women in the US is getting a cesarean, we're overusing cesareans and they're not innocuous.
Yeah.
They have the risks, like you were saying, and there are definitely a lot of consequences to them, especially downstream if somebody has more babies.
Yeah.
But yeah, when we're not given the chance to even gestate, then doctors have no idea how long triplets will go. They have no idea, and it was dangerous for me to let them go that long. She got biophysical profiles every week, and she was 8 out of 8 every time, and the babies were growing. Why would I intervene? So I mean, it's not, they just, because they don't have a good reason. Studies from 20 years ago, and they're still going by those. So again, it's like
Yeah.
they think it's evidence-based, but it's just old evidence. They don't do any expectant management. It's all active management, because if we can get these babies out at 34 weeks, then we can put them in the NICU, then we can have control over them, because they're a ticking time bomb inside the mother. We can't control that. They hate that women like have their babies gestating inside of them when they could be in the NICU, where they can keep them attached to monitors and then give them medication and help them breathe if they need that. And then they were going to let her babies go at keep them in the NICU until their due date, and then she could go home. That's what she was told. 34 weeks they would do the C-section.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing what support can look like outside the system. And yeah, I mean, I've seen them do really good work in the
Yeah.
hospital,
Oh,
but
absolutely. And when you need that, it's great. And it's really unfortunate that we can't have collaborative care. Like, why do they have to be so adversarial?
yeah.
If we could just go in and say, this is what the client wants, and we had physicians and nurses that just listened and said, well, we're sorry that you're here. We know that this is not where you want to be, and we're going to help you have the best experience you can have. And even though it's going to be way more medical than you wanted it to be, but you need to be here. And so we're here to help you, because that is what they're there for. But they can't do that. They can't collaborate with the midwife. They kick them out, or they make them sit in the room and be quiet. And it's not really conducive to good patient care.
I'm curious about is cord prolapse like a concern at all with these little babies, or not necessarily?
Yeah, I don't know the incidence of cord prolapse with preterm. I know at term it's 0.5, which is, you know, minuscule, for just a cephalic baby. But with preterm, yeah, I have definitely, I've seen more cord prolapse in the one of the reasons is preterm babies tend to have a higher incidence, depending on when they are, especially if they're between 28 and 32, higher incidence of being breech. And if they are, and they're complete, that cord can slip down. If indeed it's the membranes that release to be like, okay, we're here, labor is starting, then that cord comes down. And I've seen that happen. And so that is definitely something that can happen. I would imagine it happens slightly more frequently with preterm. That's my own personal experience in the field, but I don't know what the percentages are like in the US.
And is that just be managed in the field? Because our last interview, my memory was that in the field, the cesareans are reserved for saving the mother, not necessarily the baby.
Yep.
So would that
Yep.
just be managed in the field, a prolapse, and not a cesarean?
No, it wouldn't be. It's never a cesarean. So yeah, the last one that I had was 17 hours. She walked in with the cord hanging out, and she was at 28 weeks. I think it was her fourth baby. And so I'm like, well, let's check you. Even though our membranes had released, I had information I needed to get. So I did need to check her. She was contracting. And so I checked, she was 4 centimeters. And so we had time to give her some, she wasn't contracting. She had a few little tightenings, but she was not in active labor. So I'm like, great, you lie down and we're putting a catheter in so that you don't have to get up to pee, and we're giving you some steroids. And so that's what we ended up doing, because I could feel little feet there. And so that's why the cord prolapsed. But that was a 17-hour prolapse. The heart tones were in the 140s like the whole time.
And so what do? Cord comes out, do you just like not touch it? Do you like, what do? Do you do something with it?
Just sits there.
Yeah.
It just hung. I have a picture of the cord hanging out. That I show that picture in my my breech and twins masterclass when I teach, and then I play the recording, the video of us listening to heart tones. And so, and I use it as an example of, just because if you have a complete presentation, the cord can come down, but it doesn't mean that it's an emergency. And at no time was this an emergency with this birth.
And did you like constantly monitor fetal heart tones, or you still did intermittent? Yeah.
Just intermittent. Yep. And if heart tones had been funky, wouldn't have done anything. Probably would have told the staff to stop listening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, because I did have an incident where it wasn't a cord prolapse, but I think it was a preterm. I don't remember the exact circumstances, but heart tones started to go down, and they were down into the 80s. We listened, and I said, don't bother listening anymore, because what were we going to do? Listen to nothing. We weren't going to do anything, and she still had to have her baby. And I said, are we going to tell her? And I use the staff has to advise me. In the United States, you would never not tell a mother that the heart tones were funky, and you would of course transport, or that, oh, here I'm doing an ultrasound at 39 weeks and I don't see a heartbeat. You would never not tell a mother you didn't have a heartbeat on her baby, or that there had been a demise. But in the field, I have to go by what the staff tells me is culturally appropriate. And across the board, wherever I've been, they've said, no, we're not telling her, because then she won't push. She won't have her baby. And I said, okay, I'm leaving it to you. And it's heartbreaking to me, of course, and it doesn't feel right, but I trust them. And it's grief now or grief later. And they tell her as soon as the baby comes out. I mean, the baby goes up to her, and we know, and we say we're sorry, but there's nothing we can do. And giving, a cesarean's not an option. Yeah. So,
because you were saying the reason you reserve it just for maternal health is because people have so many babies, and yes, it's, she can always have more babies, in air quotes, but like to risk her health because it's such a serious surgery.
Yes. And imagine living in a refugee camp and recovering from major surgery like that. How awful. And then maybe you do or don't save the baby. Imagine not having saved the baby after after the mother has a cesarean. So it's like, no.
So what is the risk of cesarean out there when it literally is only for emergencies for the mother?
So when I was in South Sudan, the 6 months I was there, it was 4.4%. My cesarean rate was, because I was the one that made the decisions. And I will tell you right now, in the month of November, I had like 5 or 6 cesareans, all for complete previas. So the women would have literally, and we had them there in maternity until they started to bleed. And then we called the surgeon, and we had this, the surgeon knew, it's like, she's there. And as soon as there was a little bit of blood, and that's when we did the surgery. So yeah, they would be flown in from other places because we were the referral. So that's the only reason I think it was that high, is because we were the referral hospital for all of the high risk stuff and the previous. But if it was a marginal previa or a low lying placenta, no, we did those vaginally. If they started to bleed too much, my backup was to go in, but they never did. Eventually the head will come down and tamponade the placenta and the bleeding will stop. But we would check the hemoglobin, find out where they're starting, and hopefully it's good at, like, we're hoping for 9, 10. 10 is like spectacular, but we're hoping they're going to be at least at a 9. And then we keep track of how much they're going to bleed a little bit during labor with a low, a marginal placenta. You go in, you do a vaginal exam, and you feel placenta at 7 o'clock, is that's how low it is. And then we just monitor the bleeding. We let the blood bank know. We get family members around so that we can have blood donated. We have her typed and crossed, so in case she does lose too much, or even if she's going to go to cesarean, she's probably going to have lost too much. So we are all ready to do all the things that we can do for somebody like that. But they've all birthed successfully with the placentas like that. That's what I'm saying, that it's just amazing what's possible. So yeah, those there's some pretty remarkable things.
Yeah. Well, when's your book coming out? Of all the stories, we could keep going on and on. I know our time is kind of limited, but thank you so much. This was a topic we hadn't touched on. Did you
have a quick question?
Yeah.
So I think I didn't know that you could work with MSF as a CPM. I thought you needed to be a CNM to do that. So if people wanted to be a part of that, like I know you probably can't explain all of it right now, but like, where would they start if they wanted to volunteer?
Yeah, so yeah, they're an international organization. So it's not about, they have midwives from all over the world. And there are registered midwives. There are, they don't discriminate. You just have to be a midwife. You have to have a certification. I couldn't just with 35 years of experience, if I had not gotten my CPM, I would not be able to work for them. So if you Google Doctors Without Borders, the USA website will come up. It's really easy to navigate, and it says, work with us, and click that tab. And then you can go specifically to see what they're looking for. You have to have been 2 years at least out of school. You have to be able to ideally have experience with breech and multiples, at least some. They don't expect you to know every single thing, but we use vacuum in the field. You have to just be able to work autonomously and think on your feet, and they like some sort of managerial management experience. They also like some out of country experience. It does not have to be as a midwife or anything medical, but like if you did the Peace Corps for a year and a half, when 10 years ago, they just need to know that if they send you places that have spiders and snakes where it's really hot and you could potentially get malaria, you're not going to, after 2 weeks, go, it's hot, I want to come home. I didn't realize the spiders were so big. They just, because they're investing a lot to send you over there, and they don't need somebody who's going to be all afraid. And I didn't realize it was going to be like this.
Yeah.
And this
I'm uncomfortable. I want to go home.
I'm uncomfortable. Yeah. So yeah, it doesn't matter if you traveled Europe, that's still not, and some people, if I run into somebody who thinks like that Europe and then, and it's weird, they have this and they do that, and it's just like, wow, it's just a little more primitive than here. I'm like, so So yeah, they like to know that you have done something somewhere. Even if it's volunteered for 6 weeks at Mother Baby Haiti or something like that, like,
You're
okay,
a little
you can
hardy,
yeah, you're hardy, you can do it. And it's a rigorous process to be put into the pool. But the thing is there are not short assignments. Like a first assignment is usually from the US is going to be 9 months. And so most people can't do it because they have young families. They it's a job. You get the paycheck in your bank account, and the health insurance is the best health insurance in the world. It's phenomenal. It's international, and they pay for everything.
So it's
and,
like
all I needed to hear.
When you retire from midwifery, then you go work and do this,
Yeah. So for me, I love it because I get rather bored. With, like, somebody will say, "Oh, will you come to my birth?" And I'm like, it's just a single head down baby. Like, what do you you don't need me there. I'll help you on Zoom, but you don't need me at your birth. So I will travel for multiples and breeches and stuff like that. But otherwise I don't. And now I'm harassing all of my midwife friends on when they post on social media, and they post like a set of twins. I've been going, oh, only 2?
How boring.
Playing it safe.
So anyway, just trying to be cheeky, but and they know me, so they know I'm not being for real. But
well, maybe once our kids are grown and gone, we'll do it too. It does sound exciting and really supportive of those communities that need support.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
Well, thank you again for everything.
Yeah, amazing.
And so we'll leave it in the show notes, but if anyone wants to reach out to you, what are some ways they can connect with you?
Oh yeah. Instagram, I'm Global Midwife 64. A lot of people contact me through Instagram. And then my blog is Midwife Without Boundaries. And if you Google that, it comes up, but it's WordPress, midwifewithoutboundaries.wordpress.com. But it comes up just if you put that in. And there's a way to reach me through that. And there's a lot of stories from the field on that blog. So it's, if you want to work for MSF, read through some of those stories. And if you think you can stomach that, then good. And if it looks like, I don't know if I could handle that, then maybe it's not something that you want to do. And you could do some volunteering at, a birth center in Uganda or something, which is much less, it's still very interesting, but it's not as long-term and it's not as hardcore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe if you ever decide to change your name, it'd be Hardcore Midwife.
I know.
Great. Well, thank you again.
So welcome.
Okay, everyone, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to the Born Wild podcast. If you enjoy our podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe every week to get the latest one.
And please follow us on Instagram at Born Wild Podcast, as well as Facebook. You can also write to us at info@bornwildmidwifery.com, as well as our website, bornwildmidwifery.com.
And remember, stay wild.